Hello, my name is RS12, author of The Field Agent and that crazy person on TikTok who is always asking, are you writing your first book? So part of writing your novel is starting your novel. And I'm going to talk about the 3 ways not to start your novel and some exceptions to the rule. But first, I'm going to start with a side note. Staring at a blank document, struggling to come up with that first perfect sentence is incredibly difficult. You have to grab your reader's attention all in that one perfect first sentence. Here is my biggest tip for starting your novel. You don't have to start at the beginning. When I first started writing The Field Agent, I knew the characters, I knew where they were heading, I knew some character development that needed to happen and some relationships that would form along the way, but I didn't know where the story was starting. So I actually didn't start writing at the beginning. I started writing chapter 9 and chapter 10. For those of you who have read The Field Agent, that is when Bennett and Darcy have their first big interaction. I was so excited about the scene, so I figured, why not start there? Instead of dreading writing the beginning of my novel, I started where I was excited and I worked backwards. A great question you can ask yourself if you know where your characters are going to end is, how do my characters get there? And what do my characters do to have this character development and end up at this ending? So don't stress that you have to start writing at the beginning of your novel. You don't. You can write your novel out of order. Now let's get to the point. Here are 3 ways not to start your novel. The first way not to start your novel, having your characters waking up. This is mostly targeted towards coming-of-age novels or modern books. The reader is not interested in reading about the main character waking up and dreading going to school or to work. Everyone dreads going to school or work. This is not interesting. There are so many ways to start your novel with your character before they're heading to work or school that are way more interesting. Your character could be throwing clothes on the floor as their mom is yelling up the stairs that they're gonna leave without them, and then all of a sudden your main character realizes that they didn't finish the math homework that is due. This is so much more interesting. You need to up the ante. Now, for the exception to the rule, your character needs to either be waking up from something dramatic or to something dramatic. If you're working on a fantasy novel, your character can be waking up in the middle of a battlefield covered in blood and surrounded by dead bodies. Now that gets your reader's attention. So please remember, if your character is waking up at the beginning of the novel, they need to be waking up to something dramatic. You need to get your readers thinking, okay, wow, what is happening here? That keeps them interested and wanting to read more. Way 2 of not to start your novel, excessive backstory. Backstory is great to sprinkle out throughout your whole story. You get to leave hints along the way that your readers get excited about, and they slowly get to fill in the gaps. One of the best examples I have of a book series that sprinkles out backstory for multiple characters throughout the story is the Heroes of Olympus series. The author is great at hinting that there is more to these characters than that we see, and that we have to wait and be patient to find out this information, causing the reader to want to read faster to fill in these gaps. You want your readers desperate to find out this information. You don't want to just hand it to them on a silver platter right away in the first chapter. All right, now the exception to the rule of the over information of the backstory is when it is absolutely necessary for the readers to know certain things about the character as a child. Check out City and Bone, where the author does exactly that. You get a little glimpse of the main character's childhood before you're thrusted forward into the story. The best place to put this is not in chapter 1, but actually in a prologue. And the key is to make it short because your readers, they want to start the story. Also be careful when you're writing a prologue because in a way you're sort of having to have 2 starts to your story, meaning you need 2 perfect first sentences to grasp your reader's attention. The third way not to start your novel, introducing too many characters right in the first chapter. Your reader is already being bombarded with so much information, setting, dialogue, trying to form a picture of these characters in their mind. By introducing 10 or 20 characters, they're not going to remember all of them. You don't want to overwhelm your readers. In The Field Agent, in chapter 1, I have 3 characters who are actively in the scene. And what I mean by that is these 3 characters are physically in the scene and that they have dialogue. I mentioned a few other characters, but these are a hint at characters to come that the readers will meet. If you think you have too many characters in your first chapter, odds are you do. Now, often in the editing process, you and your editor will look at all of your characters, and for example, you'll look at 2 of them and see if you can combine them into one character to accomplish the same goal in the story, to try and reduce your character number in your book. Originally in The Field Agent, each year at school had 6 girls and 6 boys, but we decided to knock that down to 5 boys and 5 girls 10 being easier for the reader to remember, plus all the other characters that they had to meet. I don't have an exception to this rule because I firmly believe that you need to slowly introduce your characters to your readers so that you don't overwhelm them. If you think you have a good example of this, please let me know in the comments. Thanks for following along. I hope you learned something that helps you in writing your first novel. Consider hitting the like button or even the subscribe button. And better yet, if you need a new book to read, The Field Agent is available wherever you get your books.